Hey, I'm Bryce Eger. I'm with Corteva Agriscience, and I'm here with Kristjan Hebert from HGV, and we're on one of the farms, one of the yards, I guess.
One of the yards, yeah. This yard here is right just 2 miles north of Fairlight. It's where I grew up. I think we moved here when I was maybe 5 years old. The main homestead is where my wife and I and my son Bentley and my daughter Ivy live. That's just 5 miles west.
Yeah.
Or 5 miles east, right on the highway, and that's where Dad grew up. So I bought it from my grandpa. This is what I'd call the hub location and where the majority of the infrastructure is.
So I grew up in Mooseman. You grew up down here, down at Fairlight. So you were kind of an outcast, being from Fairlight. But we do have a little bit of history because my dad and your grandpa Schooley were fast friends, and they golfed together, and they played cards, and they did a whole bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, it's always an interesting story that your dad and my grandpa were men's night partners for I don't know how many years, right?
Yeah, a lot of years.
Yeah. So it's and I'm a bit of an implant into Mooseman. I mean, the farm south of Mooseman at Fairlight. I went to high school in Merrifield, played hockey in Mooseman in Whitewood, and played baseball in Wahota. So I mean, kind of got the feel for the whole group of communities.
So I always find it interesting when we do get a chance to catch up, and you have told this and talked about this with a lot of different people, but I mean, what brought you back to the farm, right? Because you were not going to be a farmer. That wasn't part of the plan.
No, I mean, I was just kind of a typical small town kid that had decent marks. So teachers said you should head in to be a doctor or a lawyer, because why would you farm, right? And to be honest, even Dad's generation, I mean, most people were telling their kids not to come back to the farm. It was tough. So yeah, I went and took kind of a year of pre-med and wrote my MCAT and said, this is horrible. And so Dad and I and Mom had a chat, and I was going to take agronomy, and Dad said, why don't you take business? That's the part of farming I'm struggling with a bit right now, or at least it's moving so fast it's hard to keep up on. So when I came home, I did my CPA with Myers North Penny just to get a better grasp on it. And I would say it's really the love of business that brought me back to farming.
So biggest challenges that you guys deal with on a day-to-day basis around here?
I would say kind of in the last 2 years, and I think most people in the world have seen this through COVID, is that the volatility in pricing of both our revenues and our expenses, right? Crop prices are phenomenal, but the volatility in fertilizer and chemical and seed, and then also in equipment and fuel. I mean, 2 years ago I was buying fuel for 43 cents. I'm paying $1.41 today. Yeah. Right? So, and we'll go through $2,900 of fuel, every 3 hours sometimes in harvest. So that volatility is definitely getting difficult. And I would say the other thing, that we're struggling with right now is this just supply and logistics, right? Yeah. And everybody is struggling with that, and I think farms understand that. The one part that obviously we find frustrating is that our farm is our money. So if it has to shut down for a week or 10 days because we can't get a tire or we can't get, a bag of seed, we can't divide that by 1 billion shareholders or 1 million shareholders. Yeah. I just write checks myself. Yeah. And so that has been a little bit frustrating here in this last 24 months. And it's because prior to that, it didn't exist.
Yeah, we didn't have to worry about it.
But if you pre-planned it all, you never had any part you couldn't have within 24 hours. Yeah. Right? Like, it was just something that we haven't seen in so long.
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say our biggest challenge on our side has been the same, right? We came through the first cycle of the last 2 years, the pandemic that started, and we made it through, 2020. The growing season was a non-event. Yep. 2021, we navigated, stuff that happened, supply chain in all different parts of the world, and when you're building a product that has 40 different components, it looks like this nice, jug or tote of product that you all are going to use, and then you realize now there's everything from, who knew that there were 7 different ingredients in plastic for the actual jug? I'm not a chemist, so I didn't know that. So you realize that all of these things are interconnected, which it's not fun when we're in the middle of it. It's not fun for you guys waiting on product, but I think it makes us better business people because now we've learned how to, one, not take things for granted, and then two, we've learned that you have to go to that level of detail just to make sure that you're supporting. Because the other thing that we talk about, and I talk about a lot, but we talk a lot about internally at Corteva, and I know a lot in the industry do, is so I know where my paycheck comes from, and it comes from your farm.
Yeah. Well, and I think the probably the biggest thing that we all learned out of the supply issues is we need to do a better job of communicating. Agriculture, I mean, fierce independence is what kind of allows farms to be successful. That's how they beat all the challenges. But the downside of it is, in this industry, we're not the best at collaborating, which means you should, talk early and figure out a way to solve problems early.
So one of the things that we're focused on at Corteva that kind of bridges into this is, our commitment to farm and our commitment to farming, regardless of where that farm is in the world, and really, really trying to make sure that we are part of the team, team agriculture, and we are looked at as being part of your team on, at HGV. Our focus is doing everything we possibly can to innovate, reinvest in innovation, and provide better products, better service to make it so that you can be more efficient and do what you do. So when you think about the way that you look at the industry itself, what are the things that you're looking for from an organization like us to be able to provide you with that we can make sure that we're hitting the mark on, checking the boxes, so to speak, for you?
Yep. Well, I mean, when it comes to products, I think you guys have a bit of a balancing act or a teeter-totter you have to ride, right? One is that, we enjoy and we require you guys to put as much into R&D as you do, right? Because we have to keep innovating on new products as the environment changes. That's very important in order, to be honest, like you said, commitment to farm, feed the world, and for profitability to exist. But on the other side of that, teeter-totter, we have to keep products in line to ensure that farms still have margin. I think the other thing the industry has to work on is, we spent 50 years turning farms into numbers, whether it's a contract at the top or a number at the top of a grain contract, or a number in a ChemRep's book of numbers to call.
Yeah.
And I understand that. 20 years ago, we had horrible internet, right? You're lucky if we only had house phones.
Yeah.
So the only way to do it was kitchen table by kitchen table, and that all got rolled up through the industry, and so they ended up just being a number.
Yeah, it was an RM map.
That's all it was,
yeah.
Right? And so I think in today's world, though, with the speed of communication and technology available, and also the differentiation in clients, right? So you have your large progressive farms, you got your middle-sized, I think they're all family farms, but that just has pure family members working on it. And then we have all our little niche farms, but those groups all need kind of what we call a different customer journey. And so I see the industry, the companies that can't change to this customer journey style versus every farm's a number style, are starting to see some issues. And I mean, even from my side, I mean, you and I have had conversations about this, and I can say where I'm frustrated, where if certain numbers phone, I just won't even pick up, because it's a waste of my time. And in today's world, at the speed it's moving, there's one commodity that is invaluable, and that's time.
Yeah.
And so that, that's a part that I think as an industry, we need to work back towards, is I think agriculture was made great years ago by relationships.
Yeah. And I think that we've talked also previously about the fact that there's a relationship factor that has to come into that commitment, right? Because if it is just spreadsheet, and it's just, the numbers on that spreadsheet that are saying and dictating how we operate our business, then we're going to miss, one, we're going to miss opportunities as an organization, but two, we're going to miss opportunities to actually create opportunities for you, because we're going to be just solely focused on, well, what's the, what does the income statement look like? What's the balance statement look like? And how do we make sure that we keep the right connection with you personally, and not just you, but everybody that interacts on your farm, your team at your farm, right? We've got to make sure that we do that right, and that when we do things right, we celebrate that collectively. When we make a mistake, we own up to it and we work through it, so that we can make sure that we preserve the longevity, because you're not doing this for 1 year, and neither am I.
No.
So we've got to make sure that it is a long-term relationship. And for me, that's the commitment that we have to bring each and every day. Is this is not, and it's not a win-loss column. It's a long-term creation of, you can call it creation of wealth, you can call it creation of opportunity, you can call it a food creation factory. That's what we need to be able to do, and our commitment is that we want to be here, with you as a farmer, day in, day out, through the ups and downs, because we deal with the same ups and downs. We may get them a little bit later or a little bit earlier, but the industry is so in sync on that. So
Well, I think if everybody is on the same page, that the success and the long-term sustainability of the farm is the most important part, not necessarily which product is used or what the time is. And I think the last 2 years has probably taught us that more than anything. If that's the goal and everybody feels they're collaborating as the team that helps keep all of the farms moving forward, then that's probably how the industry wins, right? And it's the best use of everybody's time. And that's the part I think we look for lots as we're meeting is, does it feel like we're getting information and advice and opinions that are in the best interest of our farm, right? And when we get that, then those are the companies, and Corteva is one of them that we collaborate with lots, right? And I mean, you and I are pretty open about it. Like, there's times that I'm pretty open on things I don't like, and there's a lot of times I'm open on things that we really do like. But that we also, I think, always find a solution that keeps it moving forward. And that's the whole point, is that it's not a win-loss column, right? It's not this one thing went wrong, and so, we're going to move away. No. What can we learn from that from both sides?
Yeah, and I think the other commitment that's important is the adjustment to what sustainability means, right? So you talked about the financials. We've talked, previously we've talked about communities. It is about environment and climate and making sure that portion of sustainability is right, but it's a whole ecosystem that goes on around agriculture that it's not just about, what the weather's going to do next week. It is about what are we doing to make sure that everything that is connected to agriculture is here long term. That's what sustainability is.
Well, and I think I was with a bunch of the ag ministers not too long ago, and I told them, on one side of the hand, I'm really happy that they're using the word sustainable and environmental and climate positive, because it just took them 20 years to join the party. Right? But it gives me a lot of anxiety that some of their theory right now is getting made on an Excel spreadsheet, not on the farm. So come to the farm, let's talk through it, and we can go through everything. And so, I mean, Dad's been soil testing since well before I got involved. It's something we've done forever. I think we're on 4-acre grids, so we got a pretty good grasp on our soil, and we keep adding different layers to that based on topography and water and everything else. Variable rate, we pretty much variable rate everything on the whole farm. And the way I explain that is fertilizer to plants is no different than food to humans. And every human has a slightly different amount of calories they need, right? And every area of the field is treated that exact same way. So that would, variable rate something. All the equipment now has sectional control. So it doesn't, we don't overlap inputs really anywhere on the field. It took our overlap from 13% down to somewhere around 1.5. Right? So I mean, it's a big number on not only the cost savings, but kind of the environmental savings, right? And then, it's hard to say sustainable, but one of the biggest things is just the amount of data that's available and what we learn every year now and how fast we can change. Right? That didn't exist in the 80s and 90s. There was a little bit of data, but you couldn't track it. There was no way to, run algorithms on it and have AI work on it to actually learn and make changes. So that's where, now we're using nitrogen inhibitors, and you're using different crop mixes and fall crops. And as we learn more and more, we continue to change, right? And I think that's the part that, we need to make sure the government understands, is that the only people I screw over if I'm not sustainable is my own kids.
So as you think about you think about the messaging that we're trying to have as an industry, and I'm interested this is the personal side of it for me from a Corteva standpoint. Where are we messing up and not helping to amplify that message properly with government, with non-government agencies, with what can we do, what should we be doing to try and amplify the message in a more positive manner?
Yeah, I think that one of the big messages, right, is that we just need more people to actually spend maybe time on a farm. And that comes both ways, right? Farmers have to be willing to have people out, but then we have to have the message to actually have them out. And I especially say politicians, right? Because I mean, they're getting fed a lot of information from different agendas and different, sources, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they've ever walked in the field. And I mean, there's a big difference if you think there's an issue with a graminicide on a crop and you're walking the field with my 10-year-old boy and he grabs a handful of wheat right out of a combine hopper and starts chewing on it.
Yeah.
You probably have a different trust in my wheat than some paper that you may have read, right? And so I think that story, just to bring people back to the farm, I mean, we're 2-3 generations now away of people may have never even been on a farm for 2 or 3 generations. You get to the US, it's 5 or 6. You get to Europe, it's 10, 15, 20.
Yeah.
And so we, as Canadians, we have a bit of a head start on that, and that we're not that far away generationally to start bringing it back.
For me, it's the trying to get something that's relatable for everybody to realize that we've always dealt with what's gone on environmentally. We've always adapted as an industry and continue to adapt more rapidly for some than others to be able to create the best final product, which is ultimately ending up on a grocery shelf somewhere in the world.
Yep.
And we're not trying to mess that up. And your tie back to your own kids, I mean, that's why we all do this, right? That's why we do it, is to actually create something that's better for them.
We get on this sustainable agriculture talk, and everybody wants to talk about, GHG reductions and carbon emissions, and they're all very important.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can look at Western Canada and what we've done with zero-till and soil testings and 4R. I think we're probably ahead of the whole world on it in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But the one part nobody wants to talk about is the sustainability side of rural Canada.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what practices you want implemented. If there's nobody living here, you're not going to get us to do it.
It's a pretty barren landscape without it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to poke you. So you're human, right? So that's the other thing that I think folks that are not involved in agriculture sometimes lose track of. You become HGV. Well, it's this corporation. Well, no, there's human beings, right? There's people that are actually operating these, and I get really quite interested talking about the sustainability, that word, right? Because there's all the farming practice stuff, and then there's what you mentioned around, well, how do we keep communities robust, and how do we make sure that there's services? Well, you're thinking about that all the time because you have to be. Because if you don't have services in your small community, you're not going to attract talent. People aren't going to want to stay. I mean, it's why people exit to go to, it's why people leave to go to the city, is because they want their kids to have the access to sports and academics and all of those things that make good human beings. I mean, growing up in a small town, I mean, one of the things that openly frustrates me around the conversation around what's going on in agriculture and larger farms is this miscalculation by people that by having larger farms, you're actually taking away from small towns. Yep. And I believe it's the exact opposite, because it actually draws in and has people stay in an area, because I mean, you need good quality employees to be able to run this operation, and you need them to be here, because it's not something you can do you can't do this remote. You got to be here.
There's probably a too big, but if the farm is growing and progressive, the more likely it's going to be here long term.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I think at our Christmas party this year, we had 39 kids under the age of 12. The average age of my crew is 41.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it is 41. Right? And I think we got 10 full-time guys that are all between 28 and 50 years old, kids running around everywhere. So, I mean, I'm the same as you. I think that the farms and the growing farms are actually really good for rural communities.
Hey, thank you so much for taking a few minutes this morning. Actually, longer than what we had originally planned, but we seem to cover a bunch of topics. So I appreciate you taking time, and I know you got stuff that you got to get going, go and do with the team. So out in the field, go get some harvest done and be safe.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And I can't tell people that you have to build good teams and then not be able to leave mine at all. So sometimes booking the odd one of these in harvest is a good way to hold myself accountable.
Okay, man.
Awesome.
Stay well.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Cheers.